Thank you for taking time to watch this video. First, I want to state that, while I may look a bit peculiar to some of you, for example, to those who are not as nearsighted as I am, this is a serious video, regarding a serious topic. With that said, I do not actually exist. You see, I am computer-generated, with a fake British accent. Mike Buster, with a lot of help from his 4 sons, created me, and this video, about their family's desperate situation. This video is about Mike, and Kelly Buster, and their 4 sons. What has happened to them could happen to anyone. Right now, they find themselves in a very time-sensitive, desperate situation. They are currently just barely surviving, living on Mike's long-term disability payments, which amount to only 60% of Mike's previous income, and they will have no healthcare or other benefits after September of this year. A few years before Mike became completely disabled from Parkinson's, at the end of 2020, they had already lost everything they had in this world, just trying to survive, during an earlier period, when neither Mike nor Kelly were able to work, due to their health. Now, it is clear that, within a month or 2, they will not be surviving at all. They may find themselves homeless, in just a little over a month, and that is just the tip of the iceberg. They are desperately seeking your prayers, as well as any financial gift, large or small, that you might be able to donate. You should find a GoFundMe link, and likely other links, and related information, on the screen, or perhaps in a description, that may appear below this video. Given that Mike has an intermittent speech impediment, caused by his severe Parkinson's, I will be sharing much of what he might otherwise share. Please help us make this video, and the Buster family's tragic story, and their plea for help, go viral. Please share this video, and the GoFundMe link you will find on the screen, or in the description, with everyone you know. Then, please ask all of them to do the same. Our Twitter handle is @FixWife'sHeart, and you can also find us on Facebook @FixWife'sHeart. Please share our story on Twitter and Facebook. Please share everywhere. Once again, please help the Buster family's story go viral. Parkinson's disease. What comes to mind when you hear these words? Most of us probably think of some of our most beloved stars, from the big screen and small screen, or perhaps famous athletes or other celebrities who have been diagnosed with this horrible disease in recent years and decades. Maybe Muhammad Ali, or maybe Michael J. Fox. Personally, I always think of Michael J. Fox, and that now iconic DeLorean, made famous in the Back to the Future trilogy, back in the 80s and early 90s. But how often do we hear the stories of regular people, non-celebrities, who get this hideous disease at a relatively young age? Someone without the financial wherewithal to handle the incredible financial impact of such a devastating diagnosis during the prime earning years of his or her life. Probably not very often. Well, this is just such a story, along with an urgent plea for help. But this story starts out as a love story. Mike and Kelly met when they were undergrads at Illinois Wesleyan University. Mike was studying with friends one evening in an old Victorian house that was used as a ladies' residence hall. Suddenly, he was distracted when he saw the loveliest, brown-eyed young lady, with the voice of an angel, descending the staircase. She was his friend's roommate, and they were both named Kelly. Friendship developed, and this led to romance. Mike and Kelly married in 1994. Mike was a high school Spanish teacher, and Kelly, a psychotherapist. By 1997, both were burned out in their chosen fields, and during the big Y2K frenzy, leading up to the year 2000, both took advantage of an opportunity to be retrained to work in the IT field. They were excited to work together as software engineers for Caterpillar at their primary parts distribution center in Morton, Illinois, just outside Peoria. Shortly thereafter, in 1999, Mike and Kelly decided it was time to settle down. Mike and Kelly purchased a home that sat on the south edge of the village of Metamora, overlooking the beautiful, rolling hills of the Woodford County, Illinois, countryside. In this home, they would raise their 4 little boys. Mike and Kelly's commute to work was just a 20-minute drive, mostly down quiet, country roads. So, each morning, they grabbed a cup of black coffee, jumped in the minivan, turned on Don and Roma on WLS, and headed down to Caterpillar in Morton, as the sun was rising over the fields. 1999 also brought them the first of their 4 bundles of joy, little baby Joey. Joey was followed by Timmy, and then Nicholas, and finally Anthony in 2006. After one of their sons was diagnosed with autism, it became clear that the local schools lacked the resources to properly educate him. Schools were not as prepared to handle these situations back in those days. Therefore, Kelly stayed home to homeschool their children. This was nothing they had ever considered before, but it was the right decision for their family, despite the financial implications of living on one income in a 2-income world. And Kelly did an excellent job making the education of their children her new vocation.
And there's Nicholas, trying to hinder the efforts of the paleontologists.
The Busters were a typical, happy, small-town, Midwestern family, maybe not so different from your own. They were very close, and the 4 Buster brothers became best of friends, being educated together. When Mike came home from the office, he was happy to give Kelly a break from the boys and homeschooling. Mike, with his 4-pack of little Buster boys, would oftentimes go fishing.
Anyways, caught it.
This is the first fish I ever caught, and
we are probably going to get
bitten
and get a hook out.
It's the big one, but we're probably going to have to be bitten by getting the hook out. But it's going to be a struggle.
Or, they might just stop and watch some trains go by. And, when the weekend came, Kelly, Mike, and the boys would usually find something fun to do together, as a family. Maybe a weekend in St. Louis, maybe some tent camping, or maybe just a hike in the woods. Life was good before Parkinson's. In 2011, Mike noticed what seemed like a twitch in his left thumb. He consulted with a movement disorders specialist in central Illinois, who diagnosed him with essential tremor, a fairly benign movement disorder. Mike was relieved. However, on an otherwise pleasant September evening in 2012, while walking up Michigan Avenue with a colleague, looking for a place to dine while on business for Caterpillar in Chicago, suddenly, both of Mike's legs felt oddly weighted down. Right then, Mike knew he was dealing with something much more ominous. In March 2013, the Buster family traveled to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, so Mike could finally get a definite diagnosis. By this time, Mike and Kelly both suspected Parkinson's. At the initial consultation, the specialist thought Mike's gait and tremor were atypical for Parkinson's. Therefore, the Busters spent an entire 2 weeks in snowy Minnesota, so Mike could have several diagnostic tests to rule out other diseases. A DAT scan test came back, showing a lack of dopamine production on the right side of his brain, indicating some type of Parkinsonism. Also, this positive result from the DAT scan pretty much ruled out the earlier essential tremor diagnosis, since dopamine is not involved in essential tremor. The doctors were concerned that Mike's tremors might instead be something called myoclonic jerks. Fortunately, a surface electromyography test confirmed that Mike did indeed have tremors. Ultimately, they diagnosed Mike, a 42-year-old father of 4 young children, and the sole breadwinner for a family 6, with idiopathic Parkinson's disease, and they said that the good news was that he did not have myoclonic jerks, which would have likely resulted in a fatal diagnosis. I suppose that is one way to make a Parkinson's disease diagnosis seem like good news. In reality, with Mike's Parkinson's diagnosis, began a downward spiral, increasingly impacting the entire Buster family, with each passing day, from that time to the present. The Busters returned home to Metamora, and tried to live life like normal, while also trying to figure out what all this would mean for their family. Meanwhile, Mike's symptoms gradually worsened. In 2014, after working at Caterpillar in Morton since 1997, Mike took on a new role, still within Caterpillar, working for their Global Information Services Department, in East Peoria, Illinois. In 2015, the price of oil came crashing down. This had a negative impact on Caterpillar's bottom line.
Earlier today, Central Illinois-based Caterpillar,
a little later that year, Caterpillar announced that over 10,000 employees worldwide would be laid off, and that many of those layoffs would be in Central Illinois. Despite nearly 18 years of service, being the new guy on the team, with the least knowledge, Mike anticipated the worst. One cold, grey afternoon in late 2015, after a generally successful, nearly 18-year career at Caterpillar, Mike found himself in a Caterpillar parking lot, holding a box of whatever personal belongings he had remaining in his desk, asking God what he was possibly going to do next as a now middle-aged, unemployed father of 4 with Parkinson's. Over the past few years before this time, Kelly's health deteriorated. Kelly wore hearing aids since age 20, but now she could barely hear, even while wearing hearing aids. Kelly also had very severe asthma and outdoor allergies since childhood. She was having an increasingly difficult time breathing, her lungs were very scarred, and her doctors were now calling her condition COPD, despite the fact she never smoked in her entire life. She had severe asthma attacks that were triggered by allergens, and she was allergic to just about everything in the Midwest. The only place she ever seemed to be able to breathe was near the salty ocean air on earlier seaside vacations. Kelly's doctors highly recommended that she relocate to such a location, given the severity of her respiratory disease. So, Mike and Kelly researched, and found that the Melbourne, Palm Bay area in Florida, was supposed to be ideal for people with respiratory issues, such as Kelly's. So, in the winter and spring of 2016, the Busters fixed up their home in the village of Metamora, put it on the market, and sold it by late July. In late August, they said goodbye to family and friends in Central Illinois, including their neighbors in Metamora, the only place the Buster boys ever called home. Then, the next day, they were off on a great family adventure, their greatest adventure yet, heading down the highway to Florida, hoping for a better life together, and hopefully much improved health for Kelly. And in early September 2016, they arrived at their new home, an apartment in Melbourne, Florida. Never having been in this part of Florida previously, this apartment complex turned out to be quite a distance further away from salty ocean air than they expected from when they were studying the map in Illinois. They had high hopes for Kelly's breathing to become much improved. Mike planned to restart his career in IT on Florida's Space Coast, hoping to find a new job shortly after settling in. Nothing went quite as hoped.
85 degrees and clear skies across the entire Space Coast area. Hold on, where did that come from? That wasn't in my forecast. There is one small, super intense thunderstorm south over a very small area of North Melbourne, west of Piney.
They were welcomed to Florida by a major electrical storm that fried all their televisions. A few weeks later, the deadliest hurricane of 2016, Hurricane Matthew, was targeting Melbourne, so they had to flee. And life only went downhill from there. Instead of improving, Kelly's breathing problems became much worse. She was gasping for air, just trying to walk across a small room. Shortly after arriving in Florida, Mike received a job offer to work as a federal contractor, developing software for the federal government. This was a new company in Melbourne, and they were anxious to get Mike on board to take a lead role in software development. But then, rather suddenly, Mike's Parkinson's symptoms worsened greatly. So much so, that he did not feel up to working in an office setting. So, there they were, two parents, in a strange place, far from friends and family, neither able to work, neither earning an income, and with 4 little boys to care for. Mike and Kelly eventually realized that, every time it rained, water was leaking into their apartment. Then they realized that the apartment was completely mold infested. This was likely the cause of Kelly's deteriorating condition, and maybe Mike's too. They requested the property manager take care of mold remediation. But, while looking directly at it, she and her maintenance staff denied its existence. Mike and Kelly consulted with an attorney, but given the nature of landlord-tenant law in Florida, and the fact that they were already low on funds, the Buster family was pretty much trapped. They were in this situation, with no income, for several months, nearly a year. Any hopes of owning a home again were quickly dashed, since any remaining proceeds from selling their old family home in Illinois were spent on basic survival. And after that, the same with Mike's 401k from Caterpillar, all gone. Once all funds were gone, they were living on whatever remaining credit they had, resulting in massive debt that they are still dealing with today. Having worked most of his life, since age 10, Mike never expected he would find himself, and his family, on Medicaid or food stamps. One weekend, in early 2017, when it looked like they would not have enough to feed the children for the rest of that week, Mike made a cardboard sign to go out in the streets begging. He sat there, on their bedroom floor, making that sign, thinking how very far they had fallen so quickly. Only a few years earlier, they were a seemingly healthy, happy family, living in a cozy little home in a small Illinois town.
Come on. Try. Ah! Pull, Timmy, pull! December 16th, 2007. Make a snow angel, Joey. What's that, Joe?
Mike was working, and could support his family. Now, whatever they once had, was gone. And, now, Mike was about to hit the streets, in some strange, far away city, so far from any place he ever called home, with a sign to go begging, while trembling from Parkinson's. He thought perhaps God was humbling him for not always realizing what a wonderful life they had before Parkinson's. Mike tried to get help to improve his Parkinson's symptoms, hoping to go back to work, realizing that if something did not change soon, they would be homeless. He contacted several doctors, but none would see him, with just Florida Medicaid for insurance. Finally, he did his own research to determine which combination of Parkinson's pills might help him feel a little better. He managed to find a nurse practitioner at a local low-income health clinic who agreed with the findings of his research and was able to get him the prescriptions he requested. A few weeks later, he felt much better, and within a month after that, he hired on as a software engineer for a local company in Melbourne. The Busters were now finally able to escape that mold-infested apartment and rent a house instead. This house was not quite as close to the salty sea air as they would have liked for Kelly's breathing, but at least there would be no mold. Having this job would get them to the point of, at least almost, making ends meet, and having a slightly closer to normal life, at least for a couple years. Although now, with a ton of debt, it was becoming impossible to dig themselves out. Shortly after Mike started working again, Kelly was hospitalized for flu that turned into pneumonia. She nearly did not make it. And, on top of that, even with insurance coverage, this added thousands more to their already huge debt. In 2019, Mike was laid off again. His employer in Florida ran out of his type of work. But Mike quickly found something new, working remotely for a wonderful company, Enterprise Fleet Management, based in St. Louis. In October 2019, Mike flew up to St. Louis to meet with his remote teammates in person for the first time. He had a wonderful time. And, as soon as he had a chance, he took a quick trip across the Mississippi to see something he really missed. Something he had not seen for a while. An Illinois cornfield. Mike, now living in a state that has only 2 seasons, forgot that there is not much to see in many Illinois cornfields in October. All the same, after all he and his family had been through the past few years, it was nice just to be back home in Illinois again, even if only for a few minutes. He planned on returning to the St. Louis office in March 2020, but then came a pandemic. Mike hoped to continue working for Enterprise for several years, but Parkinson's is a relentless foe. By the end of 2020, Mike could not go on. His movement disorders specialist at the Mayo Clinic in Florida was amazed he was still trying to work, and they were urging him to apply for disability in early to mid-December 2020, but Mike would not. He knew that his job was the only thing keeping his family from being homeless. By the end of 2020, Mike oftentimes could just barely push a computer mouse, and all the various symptoms and side effects of medication were out of control, leaving him, essentially, unable to accomplish any work. He was constantly having to deal with extreme tremors, severe dyskinesias, bradykinesia, gait and balance issues, and excruciatingly painful and uncomfortable episodes of dystonia from head to toe. These episodes of severe dystonia sometimes made it feel like Mike was being choked, or like some larger force was trying to unscrew Mike's head from his body. While this would be hard for anyone, Mike's situation seemed to be worse than for many. Most other people, Mike knows, with Parkinson's were more easily able to quit their jobs, since they were already close to retirement or already retired. Mike has had Parkinson's for around a decade, and he is now only 51. Mike and Kelly still have all 4 of their children at home, 2 high school age, and 2 in community college. That's 4 very hungry, growing boys. Mike's Parkinson's seems to be worsening much more rapidly than for many, including older patients that Mike knows. Additionally, Mike was also diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis in 2018, oftentimes leaving him in excruciating pain, burning pain in most of his joints. His left hand is already permanently disfigured. Mike, Kelly and their family were just barely getting by on Mike's full salary. They already lost everything they had during that previous period when neither Mike nor Kelly could work. So, they had and have nothing. Everything they had was lost. Mike was able to make a claim for long-term disability insurance. However, there was no guarantee it would be approved. And, if it were approved, there would be a mandatory minimum of 3 months before Mike and his family would receive any payment. Also, the long-term disability insurance would provide only 60% of what Mike had earned while working, and with no other benefits, of course. Mike reached out to various government agencies and politicians, but quickly realized that there is no safety net for a family like his in this great country. Thousands of truly disabled people die annually waiting for Social Security to make decisions about government disability. A very sad situation, indeed. The only politician Mike heard back from sent him a generic form letter stating, "Thank you for sharing your thoughts with me. I want you to know that I am fighting every day for you and your American dream." Realizing what a desperate situation Mike and his family were in, Mike's cousin set up a GoFundMe campaign around Christmas 2020 to help Mike's family survive between the time he stopped working and the time he might begin receiving checks from long-term disability. They also hoped to receive enough funds to either pay down debt or for future brain surgery. This campaign was a success, and Mike, Kelly and their family are forever grateful. Mike reported to his donors in March 2021 the good news that he would be receiving long-term disability starting in the next month, in April. Mike was feeling rather optimistic at that point. Although he had not really thought through how impossible it was going to be for his family to survive on 60% of one income, and with no benefits in a 2-income world. In mid-May 2021, Kelly had a heart attack. The doctors performed several tests, and they determined that her heart attack was caused by a rare condition called broken heart syndrome. Yes, that is a real condition. The cardiologist who performed Kelly's cardiac catheterization explained to Mike that broken heart syndrome is caused by only one thing: acute emotional stress. Mike knew right then that his Parkinson's and all the impoverishment and stress that came along with it were the cause. The next day, after her heart attack, after she had a cardiac catheterization and also started taking new medications, suddenly, it was as if Kelly had some form of dementia. She could not speak properly, making up words, not remembering words, not remembering all sorts of things. She even forgot how to perform simple tasks, like how to turn off the cell phone she had been using for years. She was still in the hospital when this happened, but none of the staff had any idea why this was happening. So, they left the hospital with no answers. Mike only knew that Kelly was now dealing with a heart condition that was caused primarily by the stress of him having Parkinson's, and the impoverishment, and all the other troubles that have come along with it. The cardiologist did say that this particular condition, broken heart syndrome, can be reversible with proper medication and being removed from the stressful situation. But how to do that? About a week after getting out of the hospital, Kelly was screaming for Mike from the bedroom. She was having symptoms of a stroke. They rushed her back to the hospital again. She had an MRI angiogram of the brain, but to Mike and Kelly's surprise, they found no sign of stroke. Mike later read that, sometimes, these tests are not accurate. Did the medications she had during her original stay cause dementia-like symptoms? Or, did something happen during the cardiac catheterization to cause all of this? Maybe Kelly really did have a stroke, and they just did not catch it. Mike and Kelly still have no idea what is really going on. Fortunately, as of early August, Kelly's cognitive issues have mostly cleared. She still has some lingering, minor memory lapses, but these are greatly diminishing with each passing day. However, they both still want to understand why all of this happened, and how everything may be connected. Kelly is currently consulting with a physician at the Mayo Clinic in Florida. She is consulting remotely, primarily due to COVID concerns, but also due to the fact they no longer have a reliable vehicle with which to travel outside Melbourne. Most importantly, however, Mike needs to find a way to remove stress from Kelly's life, and he certainly would not mind having a little less stress himself. Then, to add insult to injury, while Kelly was last hospitalized, Mike and Kelly received a letter from their landlord, informing them they must be out of their rented house in a couple months. Because of the hot real estate market, the owner wants to sell. This is incredibly bad news for anyone like Mike and Kelly, who already have nothing, having to enter the real estate market to either buy or rent, when prices are skyrocketing either way. After Kelly's recent hospitalizations, hundreds to thousands of dollars in new medical bills are arriving daily, adding to the family's already huge debt. After seeing these insanely ridiculous medical bills, and then seeing the recent note from the landlord, meaning that Mike, Kelly and the boys will have no place to live in just a little over a month, and furthermore, cannot afford the cost of moving expenses, monthly rent or a monthly mortgage payment, that would go along with moving to a new place, in the current real estate market, Mike's eyes were opened to reality, finally. The Buster family has nothing. They no longer even own a single functioning family vehicle. Whenever they must go somewhere locally, they have to borrow their son's nearly 20-year-old 5-passenger Toyota that he purchased with money he earned at the Hardee's where he worked before the pandemic. They have very minimal funds left, and what does remain will be used for hospital bills and basic survival. Starting after September, the healthcare benefits they currently have will expire, and they will have to add somewhere between $1,600 and $2,400 to their monthly expenses, just for healthcare premiums. They will never have the money to pay that. At that point, just the cost of the monthly healthcare premium along with the cost of a monthly mortgage or rent payment will eat up at least 80% of the monthly disability check, which was already more than small enough. Mike has determined that their only way forward, financially, and the only way to relieve Kelly's stress, to avoid another heart attack, is to find a way to survive on his small disability check. They have no other option. They have no choice but to reach out for help, and in a big way. That is really all they are able to do. They will need to do this by eliminating their major monthly expenses. Therefore, the goal of this campaign is to raise enough funds to cover the costs of the following. Number 1. Purchasing a home in the Melbourne, Florida area, one much closer to the salty ocean air, to finally provide Kelly some relief with her breathing. This is a lot of money to raise. Right now, even the inexpensive houses are expensive, and there are currently bidding wars in many cases. The Busters have no money with which to bid. This is their most urgent need, since they will have no place to live in less than 40 days. Number 2. Purchasing a new, or newer vehicle, for 6 or more, something reliable, so the busters have some means of traveling, to their many needed medical appointments, in other parts of Florida. Number 3. Funds for healthcare related expenses, such as Kelly's current hospital bills, upcoming premiums for healthcare during the next couple years, along with cost of copays for appointments, or maybe brain surgery or other expenses. The cost of healthcare premiums may go down if Mike becomes eligible for Medicare sometime in the next couple years. And number 4. Funds to pay down remaining debt. Thank you for taking your time to listen to the Buster family's story. This is not really the end of the story. Whether there is anything resembling a so-called happy ever after is up to you. We thank you in advance for your prayers or financial gifts, large or small. The Buster family certainly recognizes that no one owes them anything, but they sure do appreciate your kindness and generosity during these very difficult times for their family. Please share this story with everyone you know, and make it go viral, so that this desperate family might finally find some peace and freedom from the stress of the downward spiral that their lives have become. And please help Mike fix his wife's broken heart. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anthony.
I'm Tim. It's Joseph.
And I'm Nicholas. And on behalf of myself and my whole family, I'd like to thank you for your time watching this video and for your prayers and financial gifts. Thanks again.